Hello there and welcome. I'm McAllister, and this is another episode of MongoDB TV Cloud Connect. Cloud Connect streams most Thursdays on what's good and exciting in the world of all things developer related. And today is no different. Shortly, I'll be introducing not one, but two guests, and we'll be delving into the world of AI coaching to drive organizational performance. But before we start, let's do some housekeeping. So as we gear up for today's stream, do drop a shout out in the chat, either on LinkedIn or on YouTube, telling us who you are and where you're joining in from. We love to see where our viewers are coming from. And once the show kicks off, use the same chat in YouTube and LinkedIn to ask me or our guests any questions. And if you're a seasoned viewer, it's great to have you back. But if you're new to the party, a very warm welcome to you. You can dive into our past shows on LinkedIn, look at the events, you'll see the previous shows there. And on YouTube, you can look at the live tab there and see the past shows as well too. We always get the questions, so it's important to point out that this live stream is being recorded. So once the show finishes live, it will be back up on MongoDB's YouTube channel, and you'll be able to drop back into it. So don't worry if you're joining us, but life takes you away and you have to leave and do something else. You'll be able to catch up on the recording at a later time at your leisure. And always, of course, on LinkedIn and YouTube, don't forget the golden rules. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to the MongoDB channel. That way you'll get notifications of events such as this, and the same. If on LinkedIn, please follow us and you'll get all the latest posts and hottest news from LinkedIn and this and future events. Speaking of events, actually last week, just on Thursday, May the 2nd in New York, MongoDB had our .local event. Our New York event is our largest .local event on our calendar, and you can head to mongodb.com to check out what was released there. There was an awful lot announced on the day by our various executives and team members. We launched our MongoDB AI applications program, and we showcased all the new features that are in MongoDB 8.0 and a host more of exciting new releases and announcements. Thankfully, I got to join the rest of the team over there in New York as well too, and we were live streaming for the full day. So if you want to go over and catch up with some of the 19 or so sessions that we did from the show floor, the Expo floor, live in .local New York, jump over to our YouTube channel, click the live tab, and you'll see it there. It's a full 7 hour live stream. So you can jump and change and dive to the parts that are interest of for you. We will be chopping that up into individual episodes and putting that back up on YouTube sometime soon. If you are interested in learning more about dot locals, we're doing 23 of them in different cities around the world this year. You can go to mongodb.com/events and see where our next ones are. They are in Mexico, I believe, at the end of May, and Milan sometime in early June as well, too. And if there's one near a city near you, you can go along, and if you use the code community50, so community, the word community, 50, you will get 50% off your registration. So if you want to check out that link again, it is mongodb.com/events. So with all of that out of the way, let's get on with our packed show today. We've seen a number of episodes talking about AI, showing some proof of concepts, showing some demos, etc. as well too, and how to get started. But I'm delighted today to be diving in to a fascinating topic that's transforming businesses and organizations across the globe, the topic of AI-powered coaching. And what better way to understand this than with the team from Pandatron.ai, who are at the forefront of this technology. So I'd really like to welcome Tiago and Mia to the stage. How are you both?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great.
Good, good, good. Look, it's great to have you both on board. I always like to start any of these shows that we do with a little bit of kind of figuring out who you are and where you came from and how you got to be here as well too. So Tiago, if I could start, what's your career path to date and what brought you to Pandatron?
Right. For me, well, I have the background of starting to do coding really early on in my life, which led me to just enroll the career of IT overall. So I had the IT management course and then Bachelor of Computer Science. So I got to see like the real kind of the nasty part of the computer science and the hard problems. So starting from there, but since that time, I got a lot involved into research. So
Okay.
this research was mostly using machine learning methods for NLP, for genetic sequence reading, which is also kind of language or text
Hmm.
processing. And early on, I figured out that there's a lot of challenges in this area, and there's a huge upside for who managed to crack an algorithm that is able to do a proper NLP routing or recognition and just overall text mining, so to say. So I started early on that back in Brazil. But then when it was back in 2014, I decided to move to Finland. So I would work with startups. That was, a plan of mine since early on. And then it took me a while until I joined Pandatron from 2014. But in this time, I created, I was first working in an existing startup, and then I created another startup which was focused on developing models and AI technology specifically for NLP. And this was, if you can recall 2016, there was this chatbot boom. There's chatbots all over the place in Facebook. So we were one of the companies trying to figure out how to make these chatbots smarter, trying to get underlying technologies to make this better. And that was a point that we created a NLP engine that was, good. And we got that engine used by institutions. So it was mostly used by educations or professors in universities that they're creating chatbot versions of themselves to give to students. And this was interesting because this was actually a real application of someone getting their knowledge and putting inside a chatbot to just relay this knowledge over and over for other people. And at that time, I was also participating in a lot of hackathon events. And one of them, I met the founders of Pandatron,
Okay.
which back then was Panda training. Was more towards evaluating the training that occurs in corporations and how effective are the trainings on that. And then they were making this switch of using NLP and using more chatbots to help on that. So that was kind of my journey until I arrived in Pandatron. And there is quite a lot going forward. But now I'm going to give the word to Mia, then we can talk more about the company.
Excellent. Thank you, Tiago. So Mia, yeah, your path to date and what got you to Pandatron in the end.
Yes, so I was 18 when I moved to Finland from Vietnam, and
Hmm.
I actually got into a University of Applied Sciences in Mikkeli. That's a very small town in Finland. But I was studying networking, and then I moved to Sweden for my internship, and then that's when I started to learn NLP. And I think that was 2019, and NLP was kind of simple back then. I was studying like very simple thing like back of words. I think I was semantic analysis back then was like a big thing. Nowadays, there are multiple open source models for you to use, generative AI. Thanks to ChatGPT, everyone knows what NLP is. But back then, when I talked to my friends, they were all like, what was NLP? Like some kind of magical word or something. But yeah, it was funny how fast things change. It's just 5 years. And I was doing as a consultant. I was doing my job as a consultant for the Swedish company. They were also doing chatbots,
Hmm.
but like a different type of chatbot. It's more like support chatbots that you
Hmm.
see on like clothing websites or something like that. And then I met Tiago, and I applied for an internship at Pandatron. That internship turned into a 3-year job, and now I'm still with Pandatron as a technical product manager. So my job involves half NLP work and half backend engineer.
Okay, excellent, excellent paths, both of you. Obviously, Tiago, from you meeting the founders of Pandatron at a hackathon back in the day, and then obviously Mia, you having met Tiago as well too, and starting off as an intern and then remaining there. I think that's a great path. It's also amazing to understand that you've both been in this space for quite a while, whereas most people, the common public, as it were, their understanding of AI and generative AI in particular goes back perhaps 18 months, maybe 2 years, with when, ChatGPT really came to the fore. And it's interesting to understand the work and the time spent in essentially AI and machine learning prior to all of that as well too. And we're going to dive into a little bit of that. I just want to shout out to the people who are joining and adding comments from all over the place, from from Florida and from Uruguay and Nigeria as well too. It's great. So please keep letting us know where you're joining us from. It's great to see. Add any questions that you might have for our guests, and if so, I'll bring them on live while we're going through that. So to kick things off, I know, Tiago, you said you met the founders at a hackathon. What was the story behind Pandatron, and what inspired them to create Pandatron at that time?
Right. So back then, the focus of what they were having was that they were talking to large corporations and consulting firms, for example, that they serve these large corporations. And the talk there was that you have these corporate trainings that occur in any big organization,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
these trainings, they can be like just teaching something new for the employee, but it could also be teaching a new process, or just sharing the vision of the company, or establishing the culture and so on. But then the thing is that on those trainings, it's really actually difficult to make them stick. It can be like in the beginning, the first week they remember everything, but then later they would forget, right? And one of the first approaches that Pandatron had, aka Panda Training, it was that we would evaluate the success of these trainings after they're given for the employees. And after we did some of the work on that, we found out that okay, the trainings are effective at short term, but they don't cause a behavior change. And that
Hmm.
was a conversation that it got sparked with the consulting firms that they were also collaborating with these customers. And then they were saying, hey, if you could solve this problem of actually behavior change, you can solve change management overall in a company. And this is the major issue. And back then, some of these corporations, they already had some approaches towards coaching, to help guide the employees uh, towards this journey of change that occurrently naturally happens on the companies.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then the idea was, okay, how can we actually make technology that would affect everyone in the company at the same time? And that's where we start thinking about chatbots, right? So having a chatbot that would have this, you'd be the knowledge guardian of the company,
Yes.
and will be able to talk to everyone in the organization. Instead of having a top-down approach, you'd have like a everyone at the same time approach. And that's how you can actually make a change at scale. And the behavior change happens not only because you have other people, your peers, that are changing the same time with you, so you have
Mhm.
accountability on that, but also because of the coaching framework, right? So the vision here was if you could apply the coaching framework to just guide people through reflective questions, to make the, let's say, the right decision that they think it is the best for
Mm.
them, they would achieve the best results. And that's one key thing here, that we realize that these kind of trainings, or overall, like, your, it could be like your career development, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
everyone have their own journey and it has to be tailored. So that's why you need to have some chatbot approach, which is there all the time for you, and you should also have an AI that's a tailored approach for each individual. And
Okay.
that's
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, and just to finalize, and then the founders, they're pitching the vision of like, hey, if we make this happen, we can change the employees, they become better, the organizations become better, and
Mhm.
this effect goes with other companies. It goes into the personal lives, it goes into the whole city, and in the end, it actually affects the whole world, because people become better. It's not only about your job; it's about you becoming a better person as well.
Okay, okay. So, and at what point was this? When was Pandatron founded? I suppose in terms of context, like because I want to drive into
Mhm. Yeah.
when was the point at which AI could help as well too. But when was the foundation originally, and was AI always on the horizon as part of the Pandatron solution, or when you said it was Panda training, maybe
Yes.
it wasn't, right?
Yes, it was in the beginning was just a roughly, let's say, a statistical approach. We had some machine learning models there, but it wasn't
Hmm.
really AI. And actually the tipping point happened in 2019.
Okay,
So
okay.
that's where we're like, okay, we're gonna have this chatbot which is AI powered,
Hmm.
and then we're gonna start delivering this tailored content. So that's when it started, and also that's also when the target customers, they start opening their mind towards these kind of solutions.
Okay, okay, and we'll get into, I suppose, how it actually works in a little bit as well too. And 20 odd years ago, I used to be involved in a soft skills e-learning
Mhm.
company, and I understand how tricky training is. And going back to what you were saying earlier, is that training, it's mandated in a lot of companies to do certain things, but as soon as you go through it, you've forgotten it
Yes.
out the other side as well too. The company that I worked in, we started life building soft skills training, for negotiation skills, sales
Mhm.
skills, that sort of stuff. We ended up doing mostly compliance led training because that was the training companies had to buy,
Yes.
and they had to go through it. And what we found in my journey there essentially was companies were buying it because they had to buy it. They had to get their employees to go through it. But we were looking at the metrics, we were looking at the analytics. Some employees were just clicking through all the screens really quickly.
Mhm.
And it was like the companies, some of the bigger companies, when we're training maybe 60, 70,000 employees on something like corporate governance or, that sort of type of role, the companies just needed to know that their employees had actually gone through the training, and not necessarily too concerned about how quickly they got through the training. It was a tick box exercise. So I
Yes.
hear you when you say, look, it's always really hard to affect change and to see how training can affect change as well too. So you talked a little bit about the problems that Pandatron was aiming to solve. I suppose initially with the normal training, was it successful in the business side of things, or was it when AI was actually being used in 2019 and beyond that it actually took off even more? Was there a key
Mhm.
turning point?
Yeah, actually, the turning point here was more about how we were positioning ourselves in the market. Because on the training, it was a little bit more kind of like a mass market kind of
Okay.
training, right? So all the employees would receive that at the same time. But
Hmm.
then when we're talking about coaching, this is strategic coaching that at first we focus at the leadership teams of the companies, right? So they go through that program, and then for example, when we start engagement with a new company, we sit down with them, we establish what are the goals, overall the objectives of the organization, the vision, what they want to pass forward for the employees, and then we create personalized programs based on that, right? So we have internally in our team people that have decades of experience in coaching, management consulting, and that's where we come up with the expertise, and we're able to craft this content, specialized for each one of the companies in the end. And that's interesting approach, because when we actually start targeting the leadership team, they are the ones that have the biggest interest to actually make this work, right? And one thing is that not only they want to propagate new uh, processes and within the company, but they also want to figure out challenges, right? So through the interaction that the users have with our Panda AI coaching, which by the way is on the Microsoft Teams or Slack. So just to be comfortable for the corporations. So through this interaction, we're able to also highlight some underlying issues in the organization, and then we can bring that back to the leadership team. And on a monthly basis, we talk with them, and we keep tailoring overall how the bot is delivering content, if there is new content needed to be created, and yeah, so we do this really kind of diving deep approach on the organization.
Okay. So you mentioned Slack and you mentioned Teams and the chatbots, etc. as well too. Could you and maybe this is to you, Mia? Could you explain in a practical way? Who knows nothing about what Pandatron does? I haven't used it. I'm not on board the platform, unfortunately. How does this manifest itself to I suppose the person working in the company that has deployed Pandatron for this ongoing coaching? How do they interact with it? What do they see? What do they do?
Yes. So basically, this is like the usual chatbot that you have in your Slack workspace or Teams workspace. I don't know if people usually use a chatbot in the Slack workspace or Teams workspace, but imagine it's like a Slack bot. And our approach, according to our CEO, is that people prefer to have this session scheduled. So, for example, every Monday at 10 a.m., I want to do my coaching session. And people have different goals, as Tiago said before. With each company, they have different goals for their users. So let's say I book a session at 10 a.m. and 10 a.m. my coach will show up. Our coach is Panda, by the way, so I'm just gonna refer to coach as Panda from now on. So Panda will reach out to you at every Monday at 10 a.m. and you will do your session, and basically just chatting. It feels very conversational, to be honest.
Okay.
There's no feeling of like someone is coaching you or teaching you. It's mostly about talking with Panda.
Okay. And how long are those sessions usually then? Or is it up to the individual?
It's usually around 30 minutes, but
Okay.
of course, sometimes life gets in the way and they can stop, but they can always come back later.
Okay. And I'll dive into the technology in a little bit as well too. But I mean, anybody who's had an experience of interacting with chatbots, has always got tales to tell of things going wrong or hallucinations or it going awry. What does Pandatron have in place for that? I mean, and given your experience, does it feel like, that the conversation is flowing correctly? Given the area that you're in, are you taking kind of those evaluations, those metrics back to improve it at all times?
I think this question will lead to twofold. One is like, thanks to our prompt engineering, we don't have that much hallucination, and we don't usually let Panda go out of this field. For example, if you ask Panda what is 1 + 1, he will not answer you. He will say, okay, let's get back to our coaching session, instead of going on and on with you about math.
So there's good guardrails in place to keep it back on track with regard to this.
Yes. So we don't want the conversation to go off track. And secondly, thanks to our NLP engine, which was designed by Tiago, that will go to a specific flow, as we call it internally. So there's no way to go out of that flow, if you know what I mean. But yes, so that is twofold.
And from the users to date, then, I obviously, look, we spend a lot of time these days in Slack or Teams or these applications where you're chatting with your coworkers. Is it the case that I can understand from the point of view of time, it makes a lot of sense to do this inside an application that you're familiar with. But I can also understand that sometimes, people open up more to this type of interface than they might to a human. Has Pandatron done that sort of investigations? Have they seen that the conversations are more open, more free flowing in this format than maybe, you know, as we've seen before, companies hire some larger company to come in and do some one-to-one coaching, and that's very hard to gauge and get out of. Plus it's a one hit, right? One or two hits, or maybe twice a year, whatever the case might be. Are people more open to this style of kind of ongoing engagement? I don't know who which of you wants to take that question.
Yeah. So this is actually interesting because so when we decided to switch towards the AI, we
Mhm.
started doing actually hybrid coaching. So at first we had like a human, and then we also had the AI, and then together we're testing, what is the user engagement and overall
Mhm.
the feedback. And in the end, actually, the engagement with the chatbot directly, it won. And we
Oh
got
wow. Okay.
until today, we keep getting a lot of the feedback from the users that, hey, I feel like heard. I feel like I can share things without fear
Okay.
because the chatbot's not going to judge. And they also have this feeling that the chatbot is always there, if you need them. So
Okay.
it's an interesting kind of psychological switch that happened, and we see that there is a preference for having this chatbot or conversational approach.
Okay, so it's always there. It's not just the schedule session, as Mia was saying, whereas, that's good, that's always going to happen. But outside of that, you can always interact with it.
Yeah, so before it used to be always there, but then for some companies we actually have strict schedules. But
Okay.
then for others, they also asked for having this flexibility if the user wants to reach back. So that's
Okay.
something that we are retesting now into the market, that the user can just resume a previous conversation or just start a new one,
Mhm.
just to go over some topics.
Okay. Okay. So obviously, look, it's obviously much more flexible than the human being doing this, much more scalable than humans going into a company and doing this. What other advantages have you seen from this approach, or have your customers, have your companies that you're working with seen from this approach as well too? Can you pick of any examples or case studies that you might have?
Yeah, so we had one case study which was interesting that, like I mentioned before, we're able to really identify these underlying issues or, just overall trends that's happening
Hmm. Hmm.
during these conversations with the bot. But of course, we do this analysis based in an anonymous setting, and we
Hmm.
remove the personal data and so on, and we actually talk with the customer and agree how we're going to be doing these things and what kind of trends they want to be looking for. But it is interesting because in the end of the each month we're able to have a really long report for the customers, that they can actually just figure out what's going on in the company and
Okay.
already address issues beforehand. And there are a lot of cases that, for example, you have a new process that you're just trying to propagate across teams, and you're able to figure out that certain teams, they're having some kind of issue of understanding this process, right? It could
Hmm.
be that they're always asking follow-up questions to the bot, or just replying to short answers, so it feels like they're not really engaged with that. So you can
Hmm.
figure out that really early on. And that's also the perspective of, not only the chatbot's never going to judge you, but is able to look at many different data points at once that a
Mm.
human coach will not be able to do it, right? Maybe if the human coach takes a lot of notes and a lot of review process afterwards, but that's
Yeah.
something that the chatbot is there to do, and you have this really quick iteration for actually finding out these insights.
Okay, okay. And you mentioned obviously, yeah, around 2019 that you started to bring AI into the product as well too. How did COVID affect Pandatron's product? I'm wondering, because obviously, people, everybody all of a sudden was working remotely. Everybody didn't have that level of contact maybe with their coworkers, etc. as well too. And
Mm.
certainly they weren't doing career coaching or guidance visits in person as well too. So was COVID a help to Pandatron as a company as a whole? Did anything change because of COVID within the company's kind of pathways, etc.?
Yeah, I would say this was a really driver for us to actually get more customers.
Okay.
because with this big shift, we had actually all the companies had to implement new processes, right? So everything
Mhm.
changed,
Mm.
and there's a lot of adaptation that they need to do, and we got a lot of companies that we are crafting some exercises and some specific content to deal with that. And it was interesting because, yeah, if I recall correctly, Mia, like back then we also had like several topics that people could choose from, and one of the most chosen was work-life balance.
Okay.
Everyone was having
Yeah,
issues with work-life balance.
I remember that. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, the bot was actually coaching people how to go through that period of their lives. And and it's not only about the work, but that actually encompasses your life as well. So that was really interesting to see. And then based on that, also when it returning to work after COVID, there's another big shift, and there's
Okay.
therefore
Yes.
a new need for that coaching.
Of course, of course. Excellent. Well, look, I wanted to, I suppose, dive a little bit more technical now as well too. Our audience is very varied, and I know we've got a bunch of developers out there. And the key thing for developers is, understanding the tech stacks that company use to put their products together. You've already mentioned that, Pandatron is available through Slack and through Teams, etc. But what is the technology stack underlying Pandatron, and what languages or frameworks or tools did you rely on to build Pandatron? I'll throw that back out to either of you.
Mia, you
Tiago, do
can
you
go
want
ahead.
to go? Okay.
Sure.
Yes. So we use mostly Node.js
Hmm.
and Flutter. And of course, we use MongoDB.
Of
That's why
course.
we're here. Yeah, we use Atlas and not MongoDB community. But yes,
Yeah.
that needs to be clear. From some for some side projects and side apps, like internal apps, we also use Python sometimes because
Hmm.
Python is more common when you develop with when you want to use like open source models.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's
Excellent.
it. Pierre, do you want to add something? Did I miss something?
Yeah, I think you covered up most of it. Yeah, we used to use more Python before because we had to have our own models
Hmm.
before, but now we are integrating more with the existing ones down there. And yeah, another interesting thing I want to mention, yeah, MongoDB we have been using, and I've been using MongoDB since I know 2008. So just
Hmm.
like since the beginning.
Wow. Okay.
Um, and
Old school.
yeah, yes, exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah, so just overall, that the idea of MongoDB back then was really like thought provoking and really
Hmm.
innovative. And that's something that we had to bring in for our case because, when we are creating the chatbot, the first one, we have such a high level for documents needing to be stored all
Hmm.
the time
Hmm.
and just being edited, and just organizing that kind of conversation as well was in a document was really complicated to do, for example, with SQL. So that's why
Yes.
MongoDB
Yeah.
was much better. And also, another thing that we used a lot was actually it was more like integration with Hugging Face APIs, which was actually detecting some of the say sentiment analysis of the
Hmm.
conversation. That's some things that we have been looking. But it's like for each kind of interaction you have between the chatbot, there's so much information that you can actually do on top. And when we actually created this new data
Hmm.
based on the analysis of the conversation, we're storing that on MongoDB in a more optimized way instead to scale in a very let's say gracious way. That's the
Good.
best way
Good.
to put it. Yeah, and another key element that we had as well was that back then we had our own NLP engine. It was
Hmm.
purely our own thing, and we
Okay.
had
So
this issue
built
of
from
actually
scratch by
yes.
yourselves, by the team. Okay. Okay.
Yes, we had to build from scratch. And we had the issue of, every time there's a new conversation, you need to match the
Mm.
text, right? And
Mm.
that's, back then we used the text search quite a lot. So we were
Okay.
getting quite expert into that. And then later on, we started integrating with LLM models. And we did this integration, for example, to help out overall just with the user retention.
Mm.
Because, back then, we like to say that we existed before LLMs, we exist during, we're gonna exist after. No problem, we're here. So the thing is, we had everything working back then, but then some users they were saying like, "Hey, the bot feels a really bit rigid, right? Very
Okay.
robotic."
Yes. Yes.
And then we added LLMs to become a bit more friendly or human sounding. So we're able to do a little bit of small talk and bridging between flows and conversations. So this also helped as well. And these also go hand in hand with our usage of MongoDB and their overall the NLP engine, because it really helps to kind of balance out um, how is the resources being used, and the text search as well is less heavy now.
Hmm.
We were able to organize much better.
Okay. Well, look, it's great to hear that the document model for MongoDB helped you in terms of organizing things. You touched on LLMs a lot there. Do you use multiple LLMs, or did you pick on one that was more suitable? And if you did or you didn't, like, did you need to fine tune some of the LLMs in this space? I mean, most people are familiar with the
Mhm.
large language models, and look, there are ones that are better suited for text, better suited for audio, video, etc. as well too. Which ones did you choose, and did you have an opportunity to fine tune them in any way as well?
Right. Yeah. So we started using the OpenAI ones,
Hmm.
and we added all the ones as a backup approaches, and we
Sure.
also studying into even fine tuning our own. We haven't done fine tuning yet, but we
Okay.
are actually comparing if it's worth to doing fine tuning in this case, or just train everything from scratch. We know that there are many interesting companies out there,
Hmm.
especially in the European Union. There's really interesting approaches that's being funded by the EU, because they
Mm.
want to have their own LLM as well there for EU language. So yeah, that's something that we are looking at. But in nowadays, you need to integrate with some LLM, and
Yes.
having a backup is really crucial, because OpenAI it fails. So you need to have the plan B, C, D, and so on.
And in doing so, then are you trying to continuously maybe benchmark and evaluate other LLMs and see, as you said, things fail, but they also move incredibly fast. How do you keep up to date with what's going on in this space, Mia, perhaps?
Well, we experiment a lot. Every
Hmm.
time OpenAI released a new model, we always test it and compare the responses, how friendly the bot is, and how much of a coach Panda is when
Hmm.
using different models. So yeah, on the side internally, we always have a test app so that we can test between different models, and just different GPT versions is
Hmm.
already like they perform so much different from each other. But yeah.
Okay. And keeping up with the new models that are coming out all the time, I mean, is that somebody's full-time job within Pandatron, is to keep ahead of developments that are out there? We're seeing, I think it's nearly every few weeks now, better, new improved LLMs leapfrogging each other in terms of performance. And obviously the other thing that we speak about quite a lot when we talk about generative AI is cost. It's something that it's very simple to put together a proof of concept and to put things together, but then you roll that out at scale, and you roll it out to lots of customers who are all essentially sending queries back and getting answers back and going back forward. So I suppose I have two questions. How do you keep up? Is that somebody's full-time job? And also, how much is cost affecting maybe your decisions of which LLMs to choose?
Right. So for the first question, we have our CEO that he spends a lot of time in San
Okay.
Francisco, so he gets the latest updates all the time, and he's always sharing with us.
In
And
coffee
then
shops in San Francisco with people who are talking about tech all the time, as it happens over there.
exactly, exactly. So we get the fresh baked LLMs all the time. Yeah, and then then it's up to Mia and the tech team to implement and experiment on
Mhm.
that. And another interesting word that I want to say about experimentation is that we're really grateful about our user base, because they're really open to actually
Okay.
try out things.
Mm.
And we also have partners, which is actually consultant firms that they are
Sure.
reselling our solution, and they also help us to actually implement new solutions, because they want everything to be better. So they are really open for trying out new things.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And the second
And
question
when the
was,
feedback piece, then just before we go on to the
Mhm.
costs, like, as if I'm chatting with Panda, and is there a feedback mechanism built in there, thumbs up, thumbs down, and the type of questions Panda might be asking me, etc., or how do you gather that feedback from the end users?
It's usually in the end of the session that Panda
Okay.
will ask you if you're satisfied with the session
Mhm.
rating, and so on. And we collect that data anonymously, of course, so we
Mhm.
can improve our product.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So the cost issue then, Tiago, now I'm not looking for specifics, but obviously it's a concern when you take something from proof of concept into
Mhm.
production and at scale. How do you consider that? Obviously, costs are varied depending on which LLMs you're choosing, right?
Yes, yes. At first, the cost was a little bit concerning, to be honest.
Mhm.
But then, what drives the cost up is actually is it's just you need to define how much memory you want the chatbot to have, right?
Mm,
So
mm.
more memory, you have to send more context information, and you pay per token on that case. But there are other approaches that we have been using. So there is the content summarization. Instead of sending a lot, we can just summarize that and try to optimize. You can send out keywords. You can do RAG retrieval. There is vector database as well. MongoDB also has that one. So
You're not
that's
using
a great
our
thing. Everyone
vector
here should
database
try.
yet? Not yet. We see if we can get
No,
you
we
on
haven't
board.
started that yet, but we're allocating a team for that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
look, yeah, a gentle plug for me for yourselves. If your data is already on MongoDB, having storing your vectors alongside your data in the same document is a huge boost in performance because you're not doing these round trips anymore, essentially on any of the queries that you're doing. So yeah, look, it is a concern, and I think when we talk to companies at different stages, they always essentially have the same attitude as yourself, Tiago, but in that regard, you have to keep an eye on that, most definitely. We talked about how Panda asks the questions and how everything is gathered anonymously. Tell me a little bit about what that means to the company then. How do you roll all of that up into a report, and how often is that done? And is that via a dashboard somewhere for the company to see kind of the I suppose the coaching type questions that users have answered through Panda? How does it end up with the management, the leadership?
Yeah. So just to give a bit of context, our target customers, they are traditional. Let's put that word. So we just try to make it simple with them. So at first, when we try to set up what's going to be the content, we have meetings, actually quite a lot of meetings with the leadership team to figure that out, and then we have iterations that we're going to be sharing. It's just creating documents, really like
Mm,
written reports on that. And also the same thing with the feedbacks that we collect with the users. So we have our own script that's able to collate that into a report example for them. And we have this, yeah, roughly almost everything automated on that part. So it's just like
okay.
some minor writing of like interpretation that we want to do for
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
But yeah, overall it's just having reports for them, and it's usually personalized these reports as well. Each
Okay.
company, they're so unique on their own identity and how they communicate
Sure.
results internally.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of that, and how frequent are those reports then? If there's a session with Panda once a week for most companies, is that a weekly report, a monthly report, quarterly?
Yeah, we
It's
prefer doing
usually
a monthly basis.
bi-weekly.
Yeah, but
Yes,
monthly
there's
basis
some
is
done
better because
bi-weekly as well.
Okay.
Sorry,
yes, but like we can
you
see better
go.
trends. No, but yeah, this is actually open discussion that we're having with our existing customer. That it's better to have once per month because you can see better trends on the
Hmm.
like what's going on the separate teams. Bi-weekly, it's okay. You just see overall like the bi-weekly, you just see the score that the users would give after the session. But if you want
Okay.
more information of like the trends that what they're talking about, like in terms of like issues, then you need a bit more time.
Okay, okay, understood. And I suppose, look, having been around so long and in this space, I can think the kind of how has the approach, the AI approach in particular, changed over the last couple of years? As I would have imagined that maybe back in 2019, when you were just starting out on this AI journey, it was a little harder to pitch to companies that there would be a chatbot and AI, etc., involved. Is it much easier now because people are nearly expecting this and very much used to it? I know we had chatbots back then, but is it much easier now for the companies to understand exactly what Pandatron can deliver for them?
Yeah, so this actually has two parts. Because when we started, we had the challenge that, of course, they're like, okay, chatbots again. It was a bit that they're looking down at it. But
Mhm.
when you actually look for how much costs you'd save instead of doing a human coaching, then they'll be like, okay, this is worth a try because this can scale up quite a lot. So they're always thinking that you can use the coaching for 1,000 employees at the same time, right?
Mm,
You cannot
mhm.
do that with a human. So they're up for trying. But now, I would say like last year was okay. Everything was gold time for everyone using LLM. But now the
Mm.
expectations are so high
Yeah,
that
okay, okay.
yeah, so you're having another barrier there. That the whole industry has to tackle that together, to provide that kind of expectation. But it is interesting. Still, they're really open to try out.
Okay, I can see how that would happen. So this was, new and novel at the beginning when you were rolling it out first, and
Mhm.
now because we see the increasing abilities of chat tools and AI, etc., as well, the expectations are much higher maybe now from your clients as to what they can and can't get out of Pandatron. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct. And that's interesting because okay, so when does this whole chat GPT, everyone's so amazed. They just want
Mm.
to get the end result and they're like, okay, this is great. But now they start thinking like, hey, I want to see actually how did they get to that result? They
Mm.
want to dive deep. So we're
Okay.
getting to a state that even during the coaching, the user wants to also have the whole walkthrough of why the panda was giving certain kind of content, and give
Mhm.
also the information of like which trends it detected for that user, right? This pattern. So the user wants to be part of this of the loop of with the AI. So this is interesting because now I think finally humans are starting to accept that, hey, we can be augmented by AI, so we can work together. So that's I think like the trends coming up now is having more and more analytics on products that are AI
Okay.
based.
Okay, okay. And is that an area, Mia, that you need to spend some time in? Is this reporting, this analytics in this space, for what you give back to your end customers at the end of the day?
Yes, I'm also partly responsible in the process, but I'm more responsible in improving our NLP engine, experiencing with different LLMs, maybe like enhance our
Hmm.
bot memory. So right now it's it's there, but we still want to improve it even more. Those kind of
Okay.
stuff that I'm more experienced in.
And what are the key ways that you go about improving the NLP engine? Is that just through the feedback you're getting from the users? Are you looking at different sets of data as to how that, in terms of speed and responsiveness, or as you mentioned earlier, there's guardrails in Pandatron and Panda. So if people ask questions that it's not supposed to be answering or not supposed to be knowledgeable about it, it doesn't do that. But in case of, like, how do you get that feedback, and how often are you updating and iterating on what Pandatron can do?
Well, we take a look at these statistics every month because
Hmm.
well, we have to do the reports. And generally, we like, for example, I myself right now, I'm working on the enhancement of the bot's memory. So that would be looking into like the anonymized session to see how can we do that, and how is the user responding to the bot. Like, for
Okay.
example, if the users ask, can you be more, okay, they don't ask the bot to be more emotional, but for example, like, oh, can you, maybe there's a feeling here that the users want the bot to show more emotion. Like, can you try to say that you're hearing me more, or can you offer me more advices? Also, the customization of the session is also one of the features that I'm working on. I'm going to work on even more to fit the session with the user's need even more. So not just what the user asks
Hmm.
specifically, but more like reading between the lines to see what they really need.
Okay, that must be a tricky one. Go back a bit to
It
the
is.
memory. So if I'm interacting with Panda on a weekly basis, I know you're saying it's anonymized, but like, does it, from my perspective, does it have a history of the previous interactions that I would have had with it? So we're not covering old ground, or was that what you were meaning by memory?
Yes. That's what I'm meaning by memory. So what you have mentioned before in the conversation, for example, if you were asking Panda to give you advices on how to get a promotion at work, that needs to be memorized because that's
Okay.
your goal. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. And so that's great and look, I think, from a historical perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tiago or Mia, but like chatbots were used by companies ages ago for not necessarily wanting to have to talk to customers. It's like, I'm going to roll out a chatbot because this is a cheap way, maybe, that somebody doesn't phone us. And hopefully they might get their answers there. But invariably, at least a number of years ago, it was mostly a pretty unsatisfactory experience. And going back to the memory piece, then, Mia, most of the time in my interactions with chatbots a while back anyway, were like, I've already given you the answers to these questions. Why are you asking me again? And you get super frustrated, and you either do one of two things. You go look for a human agent, or you go and just kill the conversation altogether. Has there been any pushback from any of the rollouts within your organizations? You mentioned at the beginning, Tiago, I think that this was kind of a hybrid approach. There were some humans, but users preferred the chatbot. Has there been any pushback now at all, or is it all chatbot, no humans whatsoever, or is there still an element of hybrid?
No, now it's a full chatbot, so
Okay.
everyone wants it, and that's such an interesting story because when we were still having this kind of switch, and I think one was we just integrated the LLM first time. We were
Hmm.
working with this customer, and we gave the option for them to opt out. You could have
Okay.
opt out the LLMs. You could still use some of the chatbot and so on. And there was one user out of a really big group that said, "No, I'm gonna opt out," and so on. And then in the end, that user was really annoyed because people in the end they were discussing the results they had, and
Okay.
then everyone had really cool and nice results, and the user was just like, "What did I miss?" And then later the user was like, "Okay, maybe I should actually have participated." And we didn't have any opt outs after that, and we just decided to just switch towards that direction because
Hmm.
that's the interesting approach. And I mean, all the industry is going that direction as well.
Okay. And you mentioned obviously retrieval augmented generation, and MongoDB has a lot of case studies up on doing that and using our vector search for that. But Mia, you mentioned I suppose people say asking for how do I get a promotion or something, to Panda. Is that something that Panda can do? Does Panda have access to company documents in a RAG approach, perhaps, that allows them to get the steps maybe towards how you would do that? Do they ask those sort of questions?
Well, that's just a hypothetical
Okay.
scenario that I raised, but we don't have any database of that companies where they are working, where the users are working at to give them a specific answer. But
Okay.
from our experience, looking at the analytics and looking at the user reports, we see that the users respond better to an empathetic coach.
Okay.
And that's what we are trying to do. So they want to be heard. They
Hmm.
want to have a safe space. And just like Tiago mentioned, sometimes they just want to talk about work-life balance. And our coach also offers different options for the user to choose,
Hmm.
depending on the user. So they can choose whatever they want. And yeah, so basically, it like I mentioned before, it's more conversational other than someone training you or coaching you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And just
can I
going
just add
down that
one?
route. Sorry, Tiago, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add here. Perhaps the audience is wondering what would the bot say in this case.
Hmm.
So, for example, the person says, "I want to get a promotion," and the bot would just reply in a coaching framework back to the user. What do you think are the steps according to your manager towards that? So,
Okay.
in a sense,
Okay.
the chatbot does not need to have the information of how it exactly works, because the person itself has that information, and that's
Okay.
where the coaching framework shines because it's just trying to surface a knowledge that the person already has in a
Mm.
structured manner. So that's a
Okay.
really good pairing of AI here.
And again, it is anonymized. You've mentioned that a number of times too. But would something like that appear in a report that X% of your workforce are looking for promotions or anything like that on a monthly basis, perhaps?
Well, that depends on the manager of the project, what they
Okay.
want to look at the
Okay.
trends. But this could come up. It could be that users are unsatisfied on this team, or there's
Okay.
something that's not going on here. Because then you can also compare different groups, right? So you have anonymized groups, and you can compare how they're engaging with different topics.
Okay, okay. And just on kind of the last piece about the workings, because I want to dive a little bit into kind of what excites you in the future of AI as well too. But in terms of if there is there an alerting mechanism, perhaps if a conversation is going in a wrong way, maybe through Panda, or that somebody might need to intervene with a user. Is there anything like that, or do they not go down that road in terms of the question and the conversations that happen with Panda?
Yeah, our customers ask the same thing,
Okay.
because some companies, they actually want to have some alerts.
Okay.
But honestly, these alerts are actually for extreme cases, right? That
Sure.
the bot
Sure.
should just stop and just notify manager. But this is according to company policy, right? So usually
Okay.
this is already on the employee contract, and these would occasionally come up on a conversation one on one with their manager. But then
Hmm.
instead they're just doing that to the bot, and our bot's not meant to be used in that manner. So we have the guardrails that first the bot would stop, and then for certain things he needs to notify the manager
Sure.
about it.
Understood. Okay. And look, it's great to get a huge overview. I know we got one question in there in the comments with somebody who joined late. So two things for you. If you joined late, these are being recorded, so you can go back to the beginning and hear the full pitch as to what everything was about with Pandatron. But I suppose in order to answer that person's question, and maybe for other latecomers, I'll give this to you, Tiago. A 30-second pitch for Pandatron for anybody who might be interested to find out exactly what you do. And after the 30-second pitch, where would you send them to find out more? What's the web address?
Okay. So when you look at the organization, I mean, any organization in the world, they have their own vision, and all the employees that they are working there, they want to fulfill that vision, right? That's actually why they actually joined the first place. But this gets really hard on the day-to-day job, so
Hmm.
that's where Pandatron comes in, because you can have this uh, your Panda AI helping you to achieve your own goals, personal goals, your career goals, and also the organization goals. So this helps not only the employee on as an end user, but also the managers, the leadership, and everyone wins on that. And like I said, this effect propagates not only to the company, but also for everyone around, like cities, states, countries, and overall the whole world. We are ambitious. We like to keep that way. And if you want to check more about it, there is our website, Pandatron.ai. And also, if you're on LinkedIn, follow us there. We also post a lot of content there. And also, there's all the interviews with all the founders on podcasts. So you can keep in tune with that.
Excellent, excellent. So, thank you, Mithilesh, for asking that question, and a good 30-second pitch. You passed that with flying colors there, Tiago. Andres has another question then, which we touched on a little bit, and maybe this is Mia. This is one for you. Does the model keep the conversation history, or does the model add the conversation as refinement training going forward?
I think this is a case where I have to say both, because we
Okay.
do use the conversation history to improve the model, and we also use this with prompt engineering, so refinement training. Yeah, I think this is a case where I have to say both. It's really difficult to decide.
Yeah, and I think that that is the case. Obviously, you want to improve the models overall, and you want to improve the service overall. So you do need to keep a track of those. Where do you both, and I'll put this to both of you because you might have different answers. The future of kind of AI in coaching heading. Are you seeing things coming down that you're kind of going, Pandatron are trying to get there? This is going to be, and I don't want to give away any company secrets, so by all means don't. But what's exciting you about what we see in the future? I'm bowled over all the time by the new things that we see coming out, the new models, the new frameworks, the new orchestrators, etc., as well in the AI space. So, have you anything that's kind of really keen to go forward? Is there, something outstanding there that you wish you could jump upon and use and evaluate very quickly?
Yeah. So First, I just want to mention that coaching overall used to be like an employee perk in some companies,
Mm,
but now it's actually becoming something that everyone should have. We understand the value of this and having this constant follow up on that. And having an AI helping out with this, it really brings the value for you and for the company. And I think really interesting the way that technology is evolving is that, like you mentioned, like you can actually even include the documents and overall
mm,
information of the company and the processes into that bot knowledge and the memory. So it becomes really personalized to specifically those companies and even the individuals. So this is something that we are seeing. And another thing that I mentioned was about these insights of what the AI learns about you. And you
mhm,
can also get these insights and learn together. So that's
mm.
something that's really interesting. And just a call out, if anyone here is a tech person, please someone develop a way to do bot metrics, chatbot metrics, just like rating how
Yeah.
well is it doing a conversation. This is something that's going to be really key in the industry down the road. So overall, metrics, that's the future for LLMs as well.
Excellent. And Mia, what's exciting you about what's coming around the corner in the AI space, particularly for coaching?
Well, I would hope for the AI industry to get more languages. Right now, I think that's
Yeah.
um, one of the challenges as well in the NLP world. That there are way too many English models, and there are not so many models in some languages, such as Finnish, Swedish, some languages that usually people don't usually use, or they don't have enough resources to train. I know that collecting data set in Finnish is quite difficult because Finnish is a tricky language. I know that there is some NLP researchers here who are really good at that, but it's tricky. So that's what I'm most looking forward to, because like Tiago said, we are ambitious. We want to spread to the world. And in order to do that, Panda has to speak multiple languages.
Yeah, that's a very good point, I suppose. Look, for those of us in the English speaking parts of the world, that's fine, and we get to play with all of these new tools. But yeah, they're playing catch up when it comes to localization and languages, most definitely as well. I suppose, obviously, where does speed of response come in kind of a future roadmap? We see these large language models getting quicker all the time. We see them reduction in costs as well, which is what we did touch on earlier. Is speed a thing? Like how responsive is Pandatron today? Is there some bottlenecks that you need to address that maybe future improvements will go there for you?
There used to be some challenges with the speed of a response
Hmm.
from Panda, and we did receive those complaints back in the day. Nowadays, luckily, we don't receive them anymore. But that is because that's an interesting case for us, because we were generating Japanese, which, believe it or not, it takes double the time to generate compared to English,
Right.
because it's double the tokens.
Yeah.
That's the reason. But yes, we are really looking forward to improve this by, I mean, fine tuning, or also I think OpenAI just released a GPT model for Japanese. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Okay. We did get another question, quick follow up from Andres. Does the model instance, I think is it partially for individuals, or is it one model that keeps all the knowledge?
Right. So,
I,
so
I,
I, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So on this question, I mean, we're not creating our own model or fine tuning, but when it comes to the history of the conversation, that's actually per user, right? So when we
okay,
add this to the prompt, that's actually per user, right? So
per
we try
user.
to do this for the information security and just to keep things contained, so to say.
Yeah, you touched on information security there, Tiago. How, I suppose, is that much of a concern for your customers, the companies that roll out Pandatron? Does that question come up much anymore, or have you got all of those answers ready for them? And that none of this insensitive employee information, these sensitive
Mhm.
employee conversations, are going to, get stolen or used elsewhere, right?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we do get the questions from customers, which is always about like, are you using this data for training new models and so on? And that's where things get complicated.
Hmm.
And that's one of the reasons that we're not doing that, right?
Hmm.
So We
Sure.
just try to use what's already out there, and then we use this, for example, the memory just as a contained way, right? So inside the prompt, and we limit as well who's going to be seeing that kind of information. But yeah, and actually one of the points there is I already mentioned that we have to remove this PII information from
Okay.
the conversations before sending to OpenAI, for example. So we don't even get this risk of exposing anything there. And I think like now we have the regulations being more strict in the EU,
Mhm.
and all these companies that provide LLM services, they already adhere to a lot of security compliance on that front, which protects us as well as just being the companies on the end side of the usage.
Okay, okay. And is it the case then, obviously, the interactions and the usage are siloed per company? They're not, you don't have, maybe as a company you do, but within the companies themselves, they're siloed. So the information you're gathering from one company is not informing the types of questions that the LLM should answer in a different company or thing like that. Would that be the case?
Yeah, that should not be mixed, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, I just double checking. These are always good things. Perfect. Well, look, we're coming. We've just gone beyond the top of the hour. This has been a superb conversation. I've learnt a load. I hope our audience have. If you've any more questions, do keep them rolling in just before we wrap up. Tiago or Mia, is there anything that I didn't delve into? Anything else that you want to share with regard to AI or the Pandatron journey to date?
I think we covered everything.
Good. I'm doing my
Yeah.
job okay then. So perfect. And look, I think if you want to learn more, as we said earlier, Pandatron.ai is the website, but also the LinkedIn. If you go to LinkedIn and look for Pandatron, as you said, Tiago, you have some podcasts there and some other information as well too, that if people follow you on LinkedIn, they're going to keep up to date with all this information too. This has been fascinating. I think the use case is really good. I think most people who've worked in any size of a company are used to maybe this type of coaching happening very irregularly, maybe once or twice a year, that sort of a thing. And, it gets rolled out with great fanfare and you go through the process and, hopefully, yeah, you get some results, you get some feedback, and then it's a long time till it happens again. But to hear that this is an ongoing thing, through Pandatron, baked into the tools we use every day, such as Slack and Teams, I think that's a big game changer. I think certainly from my point of view, I see the benefits of that. And it's great to hear that MongoDB has been part of your journey in Pandatron and part of your journey, Tiago, since 2008. So you've been through all of the variations of MongoDB since then as well too. I hope you see the improvements. Did you catch any of the bits and pieces that we announced last Thursday at our .local New York on 8.0? And it was basically mostly performance improvements and security improvements and a ton of AI features as well too, that hopefully you mentioned you weren't using our vector search. Maybe you get an opportunity to do so soon.
Yes, yeah, we're on track on that, and as being part of the Atlas service as well, we also have the engineers from MongoDB that keeps updating us on those updates.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Excellent. Well, look, this has been fabulous. As I said, go to pandatron.ai for more information and also to follow on LinkedIn as well too. It's been a superb conversation. I think this is, a really good example of, as you said, it was normal training to start off with. Panda training became Pandatron. It was very early into the NLP. AI took over. You jumped on top of that as well too, with great results. So it's amazing to see, and I wish Pandatron and Tiago and Mia the best of success going forward. We'll certainly watch this space, and look, we get you back when you get to use vector search in your solution too, to hear all about how that worked out for you. But for me, Shane McAllister on the DevRel team, I'd like to thank all our viewers, everybody who posted questions. It's been great to have you on board. And Tiago, Mia, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to have you both. Please tune in. I know we have another episode next week on another AI topic, any dish. It's about kind of food and meal planning, etc. as well too. So do join in for that. But keep an eye on our YouTube channels and our LinkedIn channels for future events. But until then, from myself, Shane McAllister, thank you very much. Tiago, thank you so much. It's been great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Mia, likewise, it's great to have you join, and I appreciate both of your time in joining us. You're based up in Helsinki and further north in the Arctic Circle as well too. So it's late for you both, and I do appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Talk to you soon. For all our viewers, take care. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.